wondered, obviously you had a big role in Lord of the Rings as well recently, and this, and I wondered, they're both huge fantasy shows, but very different characters. So how did that compare for you?
Great. I love the idea of being an actor, and you can play. Over here you can play this nice guy who's an elder who's looking after people, and over here you can play the most evil person in the universe. Yeah. And I think that it's to do with acting, it's to do with working with directors and finding out the way of playing that isn't the cliche way, where you don't immediately go, there's something off with that guy. He's not sitting there going, and your little puppies too. He's not doing that. He's just a guy who's working for the king, and he happens to be resentful because there's this whole working class lowborn thing that people don't value in this universe, and he's going to teach them to value it. And I think that was a good journey for him.
That's the best kind of villain, right? The ones who you sort of understand.
There's a reason. The more you can think about the plausible. Well, of course he wants his own fort full of gold.
Yeah,
right.
He's got to feed his family. When you can make it plausible and credible, you kind of go, okay, yeah, I get that. What has he done now?
Yeah, that through line's important. Yeah. Joey, I wanted to ask about obviously there's big news broke recently of Henry Cavill leaving the show. Yeah, and I wondered, what was your initial reaction? How did you find out? What was that process?
Well, Henry and I are quite close, and we I knew a little bit before everyone else, really. But to be honest, the whole cast is just going. We're all going to miss him. He's worked so hard, and particularly on season 3. We've just wrapped on season 3 a couple of months ago, and the man is the hardest working man in all of Hollywood. So sorry, second hardest.
I'm the hardest working man in Dudley.
Dudley, yeah, and Dudley Wood. Is that what we're calling it?
Dudley Wood.
Dudley Wood.
Lenny Wood.
Lenny Wood. That's got to start. But we're all going to really miss him. I'm going to miss him. But honestly, I was talking to Liam a couple of weeks ago, and he is on it. He's so excited to be joining, and we're all really excited to welcome this new and fresh energy. It's going to be wild.
First of all, about narrating, I wondered, because it's a big part of your role this time around as well as on screen. And was it a different kind of challenge? I feel like it must be a different kind of talent that's involved in bringing that to life.
Well, it's kind of endemic in being an actor, storytelling, right?
Yeah.
That's really, and it's so much a part of the genre of fantasy, is there being that kind of overarching voice that kind of connect and is the connective tissue. So it was great because you really understand the function of the role as well as the imagination involved in it.
Love that. And you have a really special role because we already know that you're going to be in multiple aspects of the Witcherverse, not just this one show. So how was it sold to you, this kind of role, the importance and this unusual function compared to other characters?
Well, I mean, again, she's such whatever they are, she's everything, and she's the keeper of the stories, somebody whose superpower is stories, is fascinating and funny and great as an idea. And then when you start understanding how that really can impact and how our stories are what make us, and the stories that we choose to tell ourselves or that we tell about our culture or where we're from, it's foundationally important. Yeah. So it was just great. And the fact that she's also an elf, made it really, really interesting and a very cool idea.
Love that. So, your character changes form already a couple of times that we've seen in the show. And I wondered, do you see you as the true form, if that makes sense? Or is there a true form to this character, or are they formless and adapting? How do you perceive that?
I mean, Declan says that she's an ancient elf. So it makes me feel or that the Skanaki they are ancient elves. But then, when she first sees Joey's character, she goes, better? Which to me could also mean are you more comfortable with me looking like this?
Yeah.
And perhaps that's it, that she's a shapeshifter, which by virtue of that fact, what is your the way that you look?
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I wonder how much of your real self gets lost if you're constantly shifting, but
true, yeah.
Declan called her an ancient elf, so maybe that is the true version of her. But I'd quite like for that to be up for,
Yeah,
that could change too.
I love that it's 4 episodes. I found that was a really interesting decision because, you know, a lot of shows are much longer or like it's longer than a film still. Can you talk me through the decision to have this more compact tale?
Sure. Well, when we were chatting first, you know, about the world, there was sort of no rules. You know, will we do 8? Will we do 6? You know, and then, you know, we kind of came up with, let's try and do around 6, right? But the idea was to do 2 sort of movie-ish kind of that feel, you know. And when we got in the editing room, the thing I always remember with great movies is, this movie's great, and then it's 3/4 way through and you start going, come on, man, please don't do the thing, and then they go just that little bit too long. So it's one of that, especially because it's a road story and a revenge story, you know, like a 7 Samurai, 13 Assassins thing. You want it to be a good punch in the face, concise, and you want to go through it and be taken on a ride. So I never wanted any bit where someone was going like that. So in the editing room, it came out as 4, so it was great.
Love that. Yeah, it's super snappy.
Yeah, we had the advantage of it being a closed-ended thing, so we could do whatever you liked.
I think it's really beautiful. It's described as a kind of a special event and a special in and of itself, this series Blood Origin, because I think that really speaks to the core of what we're doing with this piece of storytelling. And I think it's because it is so obviously intrinsically connected with the world of The Witcher as we know it through the series, but it's just a kind of a really, I think, vivid and blazing snapshot into the continent in a completely different era, in a completely different moment in time, completely different kind of moment in history. And I think it's just, what it's going to do is really spark imagination around the kind of the breadth and the capacity of the Witcher universe, because it's so wide and ever evolving. And I think that's what's really special. It's like a little gem of a series.
Yeah, like a roller coaster ride that doesn't have any bit where you're like, never going on this again, you know? That you're constantly like, yeah. And once you're on, you know? And
definitely.
you don't step off until the credits roll.
The very end.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
great. You know, it's supposed to be kind of a one and done in a sense. You know, it's a limited series. But I wondered, would you ever be interested in coming back in some capacity? Because, you know, there's time travel, there's flashbacks, there's so many possible ways to return.
So many possible ways.
Absolutely and always would be my answer to that.
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It was the most special experience. It would be a total privilege. I suppose we'll see where it takes us.
We'll
see
us.
what emerges. But fingers crossed.
So another question about Meldorf as well. I feel like, you know, her language she uses, you know, she's very direct, you know, which I love. And I wondered, did you get to like improvise some of that, or was that kind of all in the script? Those more colourful moments.
What I loved is that Declan's incredible idea for Meldorf meant that she just poured off the page. So the writing just to be able to say them lines, and also Declan would run around set, Declan de Barrett, and run towards me and be like, change that line for this, I've just done an idea.
What was that line?
There's one where I'm like, to you, I'm like, if you fell into a bucket full of stoats, into a bucket full of tits, you'd come up holding a cock. And that was just Declan de Barrett.
And he ran onto set to say that.
Oh, really?
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So it was just fun and joyful, and I think it's a different energy. To like, because it's serious, it's high stakes, but to have Meldorf coming up with one-liners and stuff, it was fun.
No worries if you can't tell me, but I wondered, have you been told about a wider plan yet for your character in terms of where they might, you know, next pop up and appear?
No. No, I can't tell you.
I thought that might be the case, but I thought I'd try.
I mean, you know. No, all surprises.
No problem. What do you hope people take away from watching The Witcher Blood Origin? Is there a particular feeling or message, perhaps, when they finished?
I think there's something that Declan wrote that it really stayed with me is that we, you know, history is written by the victors, and that is true in our human sapien culture.
Yeah.
But I think it is really important, not just interesting, but important to go back and to revisit stories and really look and see if we have understood their entirety. I mean, the fact that Columbus Day has now become Indigenous Peoples Day speaks to not a revising of history, but actually going back and looking at it for what it actually was. So that's what I hope people take away, is that stories are powerful and the stories we tell ourselves are powerful, and maybe always go back and re-examine what you think, the truth of a story is.
The fight scenes and the action scenes, because there's so much, it must be quite intense to film, I imagine, but then you've also dealing with a lot of CGI as well, so I wondered what's the kind of challenges of that for both of you?
Gosh.
Do you know what? I think, because we've been talking a little bit about the CGI element of it in particular, and the kind of the real leap of imagination, the feat of imagination that comes with doing that.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing to be working with Zach and to be working together on this, because I think it means that we could really conjure that magical landscape between us and develop it in our own imaginations in order to translate it in performance, I think. And I can't wait to see that final puzzle piece kind of fitted in when we watch the final show. I think it's going to be magic.
Because you talk about like what it is that you might be doing or where you're going to be standing, but then so much of what it looks like is dependent on what is added in afterwards. So, you suspend your disbelief or you harness your imagination, whichever one fits, and then I guess you just run with it.
Completely. And huge testament to the writing team as well, to Declan and the writing team, because so much of it is in the text. So much of the, amazing, evocative, brilliant images is right there for us to feed off of as well. And in terms of the action stuff, we just had a great time. I think we really threw ourselves into it. I definitely did. I quite literally threw myself into it sometimes. Which is great.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
It is jam-packed action
is.
and fight scenes and some, just beautiful movement from, whether it's fighters or there's a great army, some of those scenes
the ensemble stuff is really epic, actually. It was great fun. I think it makes for such a kind of like all-consuming, totally involved, immersive experience as an actor as well, which is a real gift.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, absolutely. Lenny, I wanted to ask about Witcherverse. Would you ever want to come back? Because obviously this is kind of a one and done in a way, but could you ever see yourself coming back in some capacity?
I think if there was another character, maybe there's another character of Balor came back in another guise. I don't know. It's an extraordinary place to be, where everybody swears a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's exciting, there's a thrill to it. And there's a lot of hard work you've described, and there's a lot of fighting. So physically it's hard work. But I would love to do something in this milieu again, because this is my jam.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can see myself in a loincloth with a broadsword.
You got
Come on.
Yeah, I frequently do.
Let's go. Let's
Just picture
not
it
talk about your leisure
constantly.
time
I'm so
now.
sorry.
Just stick to the work.